There's no doubt that Voldemort will go down as one of the best movie villains of all time. He's so evil that he's got most of the wizarding population afraid to even say his name.
Voldemort.
But despite all the fear associated with his name, there's plenty we don't know about him, which in turn allowed the internet to create some pretty compelling theories about the Dark Lord's past. And today we're gonna share some of those with you.
Biggie.
Before we get started though, be sure to click on the subscribe button to get all the latest content from Screen Rant every day right on your homepage. Also, can you guess the movie based off of these emoji? Stay tuned for the answer.
It so happens that the Phoenix, whose tail feather resides in your wand, gave another feather. Just one other.
Order of the Phoenix. One of the first things we get to learn about the wizarding world in the films and books is wand lore. The wand chooses the wizard, and it just so happened that the wand that chose Harry also had a sibling. This is extremely rare for wizards, and it enables Harry's wand to connect to the Dark Lords in ways that other wands can't. There may be another interesting connection between the wands though. As we know, the core of both Harry and Tom's wands are phoenix feathers that came specifically from Dumbledore's flying pal Fawkes. In classical Greek mythology, the phoenix represents rebirth as it continuously dies and is reborn from its own ashes. We get to witness this in the Chamber of Secrets. But what if the phoenix core is actually a metaphor for both Harry and Voldemort? With the concept of rebirth being so important to the phoenix mythology, it's curious that they should be bestowed to owners who themselves had apparently died and risen again. Harry willingly sacrifices himself at the end of the Deathly Hallows only to be brought back to life moments after. Voldemort has actually had a curious relationship with death. He's technically died a few times, both literally and metaphorically. Tom Riddle dies and becomes Voldemort. The Dark Lord's body eventually dies when trying to face the toddler Harry and is brought back to life in Goblet of Fire. Seeing as this is J.K. Rowling we're talking about here, it's more than likely she had this thought up years before the books were published.
There's some wizards, like the Malfoy family, who think they're better than everyone else because they're what people call pure blood.
Distant relations. Lineage is a pretty important factor in the Harry Potter universe. The purebloods love tracing their ancestors' history and boasting how pure they are, even though usually they're not as pure as they say, and others just like finding out who they're related to. If you look up a genealogy tree in the Potterverse, you'll find that Harry is a descendant of Iolanthe Peveril, and that the Weasleys have a relation to the Malfoys through marriage. But what if the most powerful wizard of all time was in fact related to someone incredibly evil? We all know that Voldemort is the heir of Slytherin, but there's a theory out there on the internet that will land in the mind-blowing category. It suggests that Dumbledore is actually also a descendant of the snake. How is this possible? Bear with us here. We know that Isolde Sayer, the founder of the American wizarding school Ilvermorny, was a descendant of Salazar Slytherin. Isolde had two daughters, one a squib and one a witch. The witch never married, but the squib did, which means that in theory, the Parseltongue ability got passed down. Now, it's heavily implied in the books that Dumbledore can understand snakes. He doesn't need Harry to translate for him, especially during the flashbacks in the Pensieve. It's also established that one can't learn to speak Parseltongue. It's just something you're born with, unless you're Harry. The nail in the coffin, though, is Harry's interpretation of Dumbledore's mother, Kendra. He's surprised that she has apparent Native American features. Now, if Dumbledore is Native American and can understand snakes, one may believe that he himself is also an heir of Slytherin, and a distant relative of Tom Riddle himself. Mind blown.
Who are you? What do you want? Kill the stag!
Avada kedavra!
No! Cedric!
Now that's evil. In the book The Goblet of Fire, we get our first look at what a portkey is, when Harry, Hermione, and the Weasley family all head out to the Quidditch World Cup. Appearing as any object found in the real world, such as a manky old boot, the object can transport people from one location to a predetermined destination. It's important to note though that portkeys are a one-way ticket, and you'll need another one to get back to your point of origin. You can imagine setting up portkeys for a World Cup would be a tiresome task. If the fact that a portkey is a one-way ticket stands out to you, you'd be right to flag that in your mind, as we've actually seen a two-way portkey. The Triwizard Cup brought Cedric and Harry to the graveyard where Voldemort seemingly rose back from the grave. But what's the point of having a two-way portkey other than to give Harry a quick way back? Well, there's a pretty evil theory for that. The theory suggests that Voldemort's original plan was to indeed kill Harry, but not before making enough polyjuice potion infused with Harry's DNA to last him a decent amount of time. From then, he would have slipped back into Hogwarts unnoticed and a winner of the tournament. The boy who lived would have lifted school morale, but Voldemort would now be behind enemy lines. With the polyjuice potion formula for Harry intact, he would have passed it off to Barty Crouch Jr., whose cover hasn't been blown yet because, let's face it, Voldemort would have been a terrible teenager at that point. With all the pieces in play, a coup would have been launched and Dumbledore would have seemingly been killed off by Harry himself, bringing a rise to the return of Voldemort and shattering the world's morale. Actually, not a bad plan if you think about it.
Boggarts are shapeshifters. They take the shape of whatever a particular person fears the most. That's what makes them so
terrifying, yes.
Voldemort's Boggart. Introduced in The Prisoner of Azkaban, a Boggart is a creature whose primary shape is unknown to everyone on the planet. That's because it transforms itself into the very thing that the person in front of it fears the most. Case in point, Harry Potter was afraid of the Dementors, while Professor Lupin was a full moon. A dead giveaway there, really. Throughout the books, Harry would encounter a few more Boggarts, including one at the Triwizard Tournament and at number 12 Grimmauld Place. The use of the Dementors has caused many people to wonder what everyone's biggest fear is in the Potter universe. But of all the characters out there, one has to start wondering what Voldemort's biggest fear is. For someone so powerful, he must have very few fears, if any at all. Although it's never confirmed in any of the books or films, there is a theory that eventually made its way to the author J.K. Rowling. The theory comes from an interview with Rowling, who was asked what the Dark Lord's biggest fear was. Her answer was quick and to the point: death. But how would a Boggart manifest itself as death in the Potter universe, specifically for someone who's already ripped his soul several times over? The obvious answer that the theory suggests is that Voldemort would see his own dead body on the ground. Voldemort thinks death is for the weak and should be shamed, so to see himself in that position would showcase him at his most fearful.
I must admit to some confusion upon receiving your letter, Mr. Dumbledore. In all the years Tom's been here, he's never once had a family visitor.
No love lost, no love found. There are so many little tidbits of information found in the books that never made their way into the films. The most frustrating, however, is most of the backstory on the Dark Lord himself was absent during the events of the Half-Blood Prince. While the film explored many aspects of Tom Riddle's early years, such as the segment at the orphanage and his discovery of the Horcruxes, it never dove that far down the rabbit hole. One of the revelations that came to light was that Tom Riddle was actually conceived under malicious intentions, as his mother gave his father a love potion, and thus he was a byproduct of that fake attraction. Rowling confirmed that due to his irregular birth, he was unable to love himself. That could be the reason for all the problems in the wizard world. Think about it. What if Tom Riddle, who was unable to love, went mad and began a downward spiral searching for power? To be honest, it kind of hurts the mythology of Voldemort, as having his origins be the result of some bad love isn't nearly as compelling as him just being inherently evil. Still, it's a possible theory, just not one most Potter fans would likely agree with.
First, I'm pleased to welcome Professor R.J. Lupin, who's kindly consented to fill the post of Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher.
Cursed job. Ever since we first learned about the subject, fans have been extra curious about the Defense Against the Dark Arts class. More interestingly, however, is the high turnover rate of the teachers that class seems to have. For every year that Harry and his friends were at Hogwarts, they were instructed by a new professor. So what does this have to do with Voldemort? Well, as it turns out, Tom Riddle actually interviewed for the position after he graduated from Hogwarts. Being far too young, despite his brilliance, he was denied the posting. Riddle would hold a grudge for the next decade until he tried again to obtain this position, only this time it was a ruse, as he just wanted entry into the castle to obtain Ravenclaw's lost diadem. Although it's never explicitly stated, it's heavily implied that Tom Riddle, known publicly now as Voldemort, cursed the Dark Arts position, so that no professor would hold the post for more than a year. How he did that remains unknown, as cursing a job doesn't seem like something a regular spell would do. Furthermore, the Elder Wand wasn't able to lift this curse, making us wonder if Riddle really did curse it, or if the position really just has some bad luck. Regardless, it seems like Hogwarts' uneven education in that subject is likely all thanks to Tom Riddle being upset for 10 years. He certainly knows how to be spiteful despite being a Dark Lord. What's for dinner? Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince introduced us to the concept of Horcruxes. They're the objects in which someone hides a part of their soul, allowing the person to live on if the original body is damaged. Tom Riddle, in his quest for immortality and power, ended up splitting his soul 7 times, a number that seemed to scare Professor Slughorn and shock Dumbledore. But if murder is the way to tear their soul, wouldn't there be a bunch of Horcruxes out there? Most of the Death Eaters, if not all of them, would have some, right? Well, there's a reason for this, or so says a compelling internet theory, and it's that there's another step needed to make a Horcrux. What we do know for sure is that Rowling's editor was almost sick when she read the initial pitch, resulting in it having been pulled from the final draft, and Rowling herself stated that the method is too much to talk about. The popular theory states that Voldemort actually completes the Horcrux ritual by, well, having those he's killed for dinner. In many ancient cultures, this atrocious act was seen as a way to take in all the powers of the victim. As far as terrible taboos go, this one is pretty much at the top of the list and totally fits in with something Voldemort would do. Look what it's done to him after all. Doesn't exactly look human anymore, does he? And that's it for today. Which theory about Voldemort do you think has the most merit? Which one is likely the most ridiculous? Do you have any Voldemort theories of your own? Let us know in the comment section below. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more awesome videos like this one added to your playlist every day. But before we go, here is the answer to the emoji quiz. Did you get it right? Let us know, and thanks for watching.